of the legislation. So thank you, Professor, and thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Harry Paul. For those of you that may have a little concern, the recording of this proceeding is for our use and is not to be aired to any outside external public. Right?
Yeah, I want to follow what you just said about the Attorney General. And it was a miss of me not to extend an apology on behalf of the Minister of Public Administration. She says she's, of course, naturally absent because of cabinet meeting this morning. And she asks the distinguished deputy to be here. And also from the Honorable Minister of National Security, who commended the exercise, but also asked that his absence be understood because of the cabinet meeting. I need to put those two things in the record.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to ask Mrs. Gloria Edwards Joseph, our DPA.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to say good morning to Professor Dusran, Chairman of the Police Service Commission, and other members of the Commission, other distinguished guests, like on my right, Senator Subish Ramkelawan. I hope in terms of other members of the Parliament, Ms. Donna Cox and Marlene McDonald, welcome. Deputy Commissioner Mr. Iwatsky, distinguished Mr. Harry Paul, and I've known you since before you were elevated to this prestige position, and other persons, Mr. Reno and others. I'm indeed happy to be here to hear firsthand the concerns of the Police Service Commission, because as DPA, it is one of my primary responsibilities to ensure that the Commission is able to do its work, and to do its work effectively and achieve all of the objectives that is set for itself, and also the mandate as set out in the Constitution. I want to make my presentation in terms of talking about the role of the Service Commission's department, and by extension the role of the DPA, so that maybe we could put that on the table, and in terms of looking at the legislative and administrative arrangement and maybe the challenges posed by the way the organization is set up or structured, and the functions of the Director of Personnel Administration. In terms of historical perspective, most people would know that the Service Commission Department came out of the old personnel branch in the former Colonial Secretariat, which went back to 1961. Many persons in the room may have just been creeping around in their pampers or diapers, as were at the time. And when the framers of the Constitution brought on board the Service Commission Department, it was intended to service 4 service commissions. And if you'll permit me, they were the Public Service Commission, the Police Service Commission, the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, the Teaching Service Commission. And because there are examinations to be conducted in the public service for promotion, there is also an examination board with a chairman for the administration of all exams in the public service. So I like to think that I have the distinguished honor of having to report to 5 chairmen. And I hope I can serve each person with the same zeal and enthusiasm that I serve one. And so I make no differentiation in terms of how I relate and the relationship that should be there. The Service Commission Department, therefore, is the main secretariat for the 4 commissions. And for all intent and purposes, for what is intended maybe for police, there might be something that you have to look at there in terms of the challenges that you pose in terms of the whole independence, and if you want to be the whole autonomous powers and all of that, maybe the legislation has to be amended to give effect to what is intended or what is desirable. Now, the primary function of the Service Commission Department, of which the Police Service Commission is a part, so it is not the Service Commission Department and the Police Service Commission Secretariat. It is one entity, And you have various secretariats within the Service Commission. So you have Public Service Commission Secretariat, Teaching Service Commission Secretariat, Judicial and Legal Service Commission Secretariat, and Police Service Commission, and the Examination Board Secretariat. Because we have grown in numbers over the years, it is not possible to house everyone in the same place. So we have 3 offices. We have one, the head office on Cipriani Boulevard. We have the Police Service Commission on Queen Street, and down there you also have the Teaching Service Selection Center, and a recent addition have been the Public Service Selection Board. We also have a sub-office in Tobago, which we established in 2009. It was my brainchild because I felt that you have to give equal service to our citizens in Tobago, so we have a branch office on Wilson Road in Scarborough. To take us back to the functions of the Service Commission Department, the primary function of the Service Commission Department is to provide supportive services to enable all the service commissions to discharge their constitutional responsibility in terms of staffing, exercising disciplinary control, or monitoring and evaluating the performance of the various agencies for which they have responsibility. To take it back exactly in terms of our own roundtable discussion, the Service Commission Department is supposed to provide services so that the Police Service Commission can manage the efficiency and the conduct of the commissioner, deputy commissioner, help the commission to select the best person to fill the positions of commissioner of police and deputy commissioner of police. And mainly, our role is to provide that. When the Constitution was amended in 2006, and the commission had more or less taken on a new role or an expanded role of monitoring the efficiency of the police service, and in particular the commissioner and deputy commissioner, it was felt that the staff structure that we had at the moment was not adequate to address the needs of this new entity. We therefore met with the Ministry of National Security and all the stakeholders there. We also met with Public Service Management Consultancy Division, and we designed a structure which we thought was most appropriate, an interim structure to address the needs of the new commission that was coming into effect in 2006. So we established Director, Monitoring and Evaluation, the position now held by Dr. Rai, Assistant Director, and other positions. I think in all it could have been 46 positions, 42 positions that we went to Cabinet, and Cabinet approved for the management of the new commission. In the meantime, we had to go about getting a new commissioner and deputy commissioner on board, so we engaged external agencies to help us do the job. As a matter of fact, the Constitution was amended to allow the DPA to use NIBDEC at that time to engage the services of the consultant. Previously, we had done it on our own, and the process was long and tedious. $4.5 million later, the appointment or the appointee to that position was rejected. So it's a long, drawn-out exercise, and I could understand the need for legislative reform in that regard. Now, the DPA sits as head of the organization, and the DPA is the administrative head. Because you have 4 commissions and 1 board, the examination board, the DPA cannot be in all of the meetings for efficiency. So in the case of the other commissions, you have an executive director who services the relevant commission, whether it is teaching service. The DPA sits in all of the meetings of the Public Service Commission, and prior to the 2006 amendment to the Constitution, the Deputy Director of Personnel Administration sat as the advisor to that commission, because the DPA, one of the chief functions of the DPA is to advise the commission in terms of legislative and administrative matters. And of course, you have your supporting staff, whether it's legal or who to help you in the process. Dr. Rai sits as the person on contract to advise the commission. And because we had a lot of difficulty in getting accommodation for the secretariat, we didn't have, up to now, it was only yesterday we got the junior legal person on board for the Police Service Commission. I want to take you back in terms of context to understand some of the challenges that the service commissions experience, and by extension, these challenges would impact negatively on the performance of the work of the Police Service Commission. HR, as most people are aware, it is a fragmented approach in the public service. The service commissions departments sit at the center and is a central agency. But the Service Commission cannot do its work without the input of other agencies. Chief among this agency is the CPO. The CPO is the employer of government. The CPO sets terms and conditions. And in most instances, when terms and conditions are set, we have to negotiate whether they're too low, because we cannot attract and retain the kind of persons that we have. And the DPA is not empowered to amend the terms and conditions, and we have to rely on the CPO to assist us. So when we are waiting and the commission wants to have somebody on board and have to say, well, okay, I've gone to the CPO for the terms and condition, and nobody, after their interview, persons are found suitable, they're not happy with the salary. While we're waiting for amendments, the person has taken a job elsewhere. In the case of property, and property has been a great contention for the Police Service Commission since 2006, we have to rely on another external agency to get us property. Property management was formerly under the Ministry of Public Administration. It is now at the Ministry of Housing. So when we have to get accommodation, the Ministry of Housing, not so? Yes, Ministry of Housing has gone to the Ministry of Housing. And when we have to get accommodation, we have to beg and scream and shout. As a matter of fact, we have been experiencing environmental factors in the Service Commission Department since 2008, and 3 years later, we are still in the building. When we identify a property for any one of the commission, we have to wait on the property management to do all of the consultancy services for us, including engage in discussion with the landlord, getting the fire services and the valuation division to put a rental to the property. So much so I understand that a property that has been identified for the Police Service Commission at Eastern Main Road, I think in Aruka, the landlord is not agreeing to the rental as agreed to by valuation. So those are some of the challenges that the DPA, whoever sits in that position, is facing. In the case of the Ministry of Public Administration, Mr. Madry has effectively dealt with their services and what they can offer, and in terms of training and development, process re-engineering, and other services, and I wouldn't linger on those matters. So that the Service Commission sits at the center of it all. In terms of the function of the role of DPA, the DPA is the accounting officer for the department. And in terms of the performance of the accounting duties of the role and function of the DPA is also constrained. As accounting officer, I have been given a letter as accounting officer, and one of the paragraphs that I take dear to my chest and I hold really dear, it says that any mismanagement of government funding, I will be personally and pecuniarily liable, which means, therefore, that if any mismanagement, my one little house in Chaguanas can be sold to repay such debt. So that when I manage government money, I'm always very careful that I can answer for the auditor when queries are made. The financial and exchequer ordinance set out for me how I should carry out my function. So that it is an archaic structure. The regulations are 1966, as most regulations are in the public service, all, and it's challenging. And until, I'm sorry Mr. Harry Paul is not here, because maybe serious amendments should be made to allow more flexibility and what is desirable. So somebody comes and you want to do something, I said, did you get the 3 codes? Could you justify going to the highest bidder? How could I justify the sole tendering? So it's all of those constraints and challenges that the DPA has to encounter in the performance of the duty. Nonetheless, I am committed to work with the Commission. I'm glad that I am here. I'll hear firsthand what are the challenges, and maybe we can put our heads together and come up with the best approach. If the Commission thinks it's desirable that it should get full autonomy to do its work, by all means, I think the best approach should be taken to allow the Commission to do its work, whether in terms of organization of its own resources, I'm talking about human or financial resources, to enable. I am here as well to listen and to see how maybe I can input and maybe help the Commission to achieve its mandate. I want to place on record that I'm fully committed to doing what my job function say I should do. That is, to discharge my duty in a way that allow the Commission to do its work in the most efficient manner and to achieve its objective. As it stands at the moment, I am as constrained in my operations as the Commission might well be constrained. And I work within the framework because at the end of the day, if anything goes wrong, the only person who is held accountable for the management of the Service Commission's department is the person who occupies the position of DPA. And it's not that the DPA wants to stymie the Commission in its operation, but the very administrative and legislative framework in which we operate, there are many challenges that face us. And therefore, if at the end of the day discussion, we begin to chart the way forward, I think we would have made one little step in the large journey ahead. Thank you for listening.
I also want to take the opportunity, in the absence of the Minister of National Security, he has indicated by writing that Mr. Keith Reno would represent the Ministry of National Security. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you, Chairman. DPA, thank you very much. Well put. And yes, we have many challenges. And sometimes the challenges boil over a little bit into creating what we call some negative stress amongst the various partners. And you know, in a sense, there is a partnership, but maybe we just need to define it a little clearer and work on developing the linkages and the relationships. We sense that there is a fairly good understanding, not only of the concerns, but also of the fact that the PSC's mandate has changed, and therefore the support agency to the PSC has to be positioned and resourced in a manner that would allow the PSC to fulfill its mandate. I think that is the contentious issue in part. But there's another issue.